Good evening and welcome to another edition of the Magpie Circle podcast. It's a Wednesday night tonight. We thought we would take in as to whether we would move into the later rounds of whatever the trophy was last night. Needless to say, we didn't, but never mind. We did win 2 out of 3, which is probably more games in the cup than we win in an entire season in all cups, but never mind. The big talking point, of course, was Kedwin Scott and his successful return, a goal upon his return, his first appearance since he withdrew from frontline football with some mental health issues. So I think everybody is delighted to see Kedwin back in a shirt, back playing football and back scoring goals. And I do wonder, he was brought off with half an hour to go or 20 minutes to go. I wonder if that's a sign he may well be involved straight away at Crewe on Saturday with the absence of Alexandra. We shall see. All of those of us who were at Doncaster, the archetypal game of 2 halves, quality in the first half, great teamwork goal, second half hanging on a bit, but a point away from home, never to be sniffed at. It's Crewe away on Saturday. I'm sure we're all looking to go in their away end again. But please, I think, Notts fans, let's do our club proud and try and avoid any of the repeats of the scenes last year when there were a few problems in the closing stages of that game. And also news of a special Martin Allen competition. You can meet Martin Allen, a meet and greet at our special Magpie Circle podcast live on Friday night, December the 6th. It's the night before the home game with Colchester, and we'll be unveiling details of how you can enter that competition a little later in the programme. Evening Stell, evening Chloe. Let's get straight on to, I think, what is, I guess, one of the hot talking points. Kedwin Scott, back at centre forward, back playing football, back scoring a goal after his well-documented issues with mental health. Stell, give me your thoughts on that.
Well, yeah, delighted to see him back, obviously, and a bit of a surprise. I mean, I was unaware. Well, I was only aware, should I say, when I turned up at the ground last night, probably hour and a half or so before kickoff, of him in the foyer, and then word came through that he was going to be involved. So I wasn't even aware he was sort of back in training, when he'd come back, when he'd been making himself available again. So great to see him back. And put to one side, the fact that Jatta's not there this Saturday. Put to one side, we're a little bit short in them attacking options, just from a purely personal, perspective for Kedwin. Great to see him feeling, in the right place, the right, well enough to be in and involved, and hopefully he's found help for the troubles that he's had. So I'm not sure that you get a cure for them things, but obviously he feels better than he did. What was it, about 4 weeks ago? I think that's probably going to be an ongoing situation that needs to be monitored for him. You never know somebody's personal circumstances, so great to have him back. Just on a as a person, good to see that he's received help, feeling better, and I thought he took his goal fantastically well last night, didn't he? Looked like he'd not been away.
Chloe, I think that the mental health has now become a much more talked about subject in recent years. In my time in the 70s and the 80s, there was it wasn't really talked about, and there were some quite horrific footballing stories, and one of which did involve a Notts County player, Justin Fashanu, who sadly later in life took his own life. Justin had a lot of problems at Nottingham Forest, and to be honest, I'll choose my words carefully, was treated quite disgracefully by Brian Clough, and Forest's loss was Notts' game, and he enjoyed his football as best as he could at Notts, probably his most successful period in football, other than his first stint at Norwich. Looking back now, it was very clear that Justin had a lot of mental health issues at the time, but it wasn't necessarily a subject that garnered much debate. Your generation, it's a much more open debate now. Give us your take on Kedwin, mental health issues, and all the rest of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can only kind of echo what Stell's already said. And it was good on him to kind of come to the forefront and accept that he needed to take a step back. And I think that's always the most difficult part, especially when you are in the limelight, such as a footballer, and to kind of not only come to terms with it yourself at your work, and then obviously for all of the people that are kind of looking at him. So absolutely fair play to him. And you only know what's good for yourself, really, and no one else can really tell you that. But yeah, I was pleasantly surprised that obviously he feels in a place that he can already come back. I mean, I didn't get a chance to go down yesterday, or I missed the team sheet as well. So the first news I got was the goal notification coming through, and it was like Kedwin Scott. I was like as shocked as anyone else would have been that was obviously at the game and saw him on that team sheet. But no, it's great that he's back. And like you say, you just sometimes like personal experiences have to take over. And at the end of the day, it's his job. I think a lot of other people would do exactly the same. And obviously it's seen a little bit different because maybe not everyone else is in the limelight. So yeah, definitely brave of him to take that step and kind of come forward about it. And like you say, it's a lot more spoken about now, but it doesn't take away from the fact how difficult that would have been for him to come to terms with it and share that with everyone. So like I say, fantastic to see him back, and hopefully he is feeling good and he's got to a place like Stallard where he feels comfortable and he's getting the help that he needs, and long may that continue for him. But yeah, as just a topic of mental health, like you say, it's come to the forefront a lot more in the recent years. I think it's probably an accumulation of a lot of different things and more people being open nowadays. But I think also social media both has its obviously it's positive and its negatives. Negatives in terms of you see a lot more these days, and you were kind of a little bit more out of the limelight a few years ago when if you didn't read it in a newspaper, you didn't know what people were saying about you, especially for, like you say, those in the limelight. Now you can, the first thing you click on Twitter and the algorithms you get, you're bound to see everything. And like you say, football is a forefront of that, whether you're in the Premier League, and obviously you'll get it on a much larger scale, but maybe you're able to step away from that a little bit, whereas it comes all the way down to even, I imagine, even Sunday League for some people. But like you say, Kedwin Scott has a lot of people that are looking out for him positively, and social media also has the flip side of that, and it's sharing experiences and learning with each other and all the positivity really that everyone can give to you and support you. So as much as it does have its negatives, hopefully the positives outweigh him for that, and I can imagine that all of the Notts fans are behind him. So yeah, just the summary really is, I'm really glad that he did kind of speak out, and I imagine he would have helped other people by doing that, but also really glad to see that he's comfortable and happy within himself to come back, and what a way for him to come back. And I imagine that he was very happy to not only be on the team sheet, to be on the pitch with his boots back on in front of goal and to tuck one away. So yeah, a really good night for him, and a good night for all of the Notts fans, because I imagine that's what everybody wanted to say.
Yeah, Stel, you've been in football dressing rooms over many years. Looking, and that there was previously a perception that if you are a professional footballer, you are living the dream. In many cases, you are earning pretty good money, a lot of adulation. Okay, there's the flack. Different characters, though, footballers, not all the same. I mean, looking back now, were the kind of people, without giving names away, in dressing rooms who perhaps might not have been as happy being a professional footballer as Chloe or all of us on the flock would think they are as players?
Oh, definitely. Absolutely, definitely. And you know, again, I'm not going to name names, but you had, I say not naming names, but I think there's a story come out about, is it Ben White currently? Obviously nothing to do with me, but Ben White, when he was at Leeds, was it Patrick Bamford saying on a podcast that he wasn't that bothered about football, you know, doesn't take away from him being a really good player, doesn't take away from anything else, you know, and I've played with players like that where football wasn't, you know, you imagine everybody that plays football and everybody that watches football, it is an absolute passion. It is all you've ever bothered about. I think David Batty was another one who not really bothered about football historically, you know, played it to a top level, won the league and all that, played for England. But if you listen to the stories, he wasn't, you know, it wasn't a way of life, if you like, for him. It was a job. So it can sometimes be like that for players, you know. Admittedly, that is the minority. You know, not to completely shatter illusions, but you know, most people will say they grew up being a football fan, supporting their club, going and just absolutely fell in love with football and went into it because it was an outright passion. But don't get me wrong, over even during my career, and to speak personally for myself, there are times when it is hard. It becomes a job, a bit of a slog. Yeah. It's whether that's when you're injured, whether that's when you're not in a team, you've got a manager that doesn't fancy you, whatever the reason is, and that's before you even start talking about mental health side of things, which obviously has always existed, but as we've alluded to, for us of an older persuasion, it wasn't spoken about. For Chloe's era and the youngsters now and the current generation, gladly, it is more of an open conversation. There's no shame to it or anything like that. Whereas, if I'm honest, I think there probably was back when I played. I remember playing, again, not naming names. I remember playing with somebody, a goalkeeper, who asked to be not picked in the team because he'd been going through a bad patch on the pitch, and I don't know about off the pitch. And the immediate sort of reaction was, "Oh, how weak is that?" How weak is that to not want to be available to be picked? And you look back now and go, we didn't have a clue. You don't have a clue what's going through somebody's head. And maybe he was strong enough to actually put his head up and say, "Look, I'm not in the right place to play," because that is swimming against the tide, isn't it? It's observe the masses and do different. And whereas most people would just get their head down, say nothing, and hope to get through it, he had the strength to sort of say, "No, I'm not in the right place. I can't perform to the best of my ability. So for the team, the best thing is that I don't play." Now, that ultimately, now looking back, you think that could be applauded, should be applauded maybe. At the time, I remember, I was part of the dressing room and I was part of that said, "Oh, how weak is he mentally?" But it could be absolutely the opposite. So, look, things have changed. Things obviously change. Things always change through life, and mental health is obviously a massive area and a growing area that people hopefully feel free to talk up about, speak up, as Kedwin did, and like I say, it shouldn't have a stigma attached to it like it probably did back even in my day.
Very good, and it's an interesting story there about the goalkeeper you mentioned. And just picking up on the David Batty one, you kind of took the words out of a story. I always remember when I did a big interview with Howard Wilkinson for my first book, and he said people always imagine footballers are happy-go-lucky, loving every minute of it. And he said in the Leeds team that I had that won the league championship, said there were two players didn't even like football. He said, and they were both England internationals. Clearly, one of those is David Batty. Your point. I'm not quite sure who the other one was actually, but yeah, that you kind of absolutely picked up on a specific instance. It is still, I think, very rare that a player will come out and publicly admit that he's having mental health issues. It's still pretty rare, certainly currently. Maybe when a player retires, he'll talk about it. So I think fair play to Kedwin for coming out at an early stage. And I listened to the interview that Adam did last night, which I thought was very good. Kedwin spoke very well. So, well done to Kedwin. Well done to the club for the way it's been handled. And I know Kedwin's dad, Colin Scott, is a regular listener of the show. So if he's listening tonight, wants to drop us a message or anything, please pop that on the message board and we will read that out. Let's just, before we go to Chloe next, let's just get a few, I'm conscious of loads of comments. Apologies, I think the first 2 or 3 minutes, it was only me talking, so you didn't miss anything. I think there's a bit of, I think there was a technical glitch. It didn't start straight away, but hopefully you've caught back up on everything. Phil Summo, Spotters Badge, first tonight. Evening all, big shout out to Mark Gibbon. Happy birthday to Gibbo, wherever you are in the world. Kenneth Pointer says, evening all, so nice to see Keds smiling. Daisy cutter of a goal, says Richard Elvian. Adam Kent, a good day out in Doncaster, point away from home and still unbeaten away. However, anyone else a little disappointed that no changes were made when we were trying to protect our lead? Evening all from Stephen Newton. Really great to have Kedwin back. Good on you, young man. Pythagorean. Evening all. Does Jatta's goal at Donny surpass the Mayor goal at Ipswich as one of the best ever team passing goals? My reply, Pythagorean. For once, I will rise to the bait. You are talking utter drivel, and you really should know better, as you are of a similar vintage, i.e. an old geriatric, to me. We will discuss later in the programme. However, we're among friends, so I don't want to be harsh. So what I've decided to do is issue the first ever red card on this show. It's a red card, Pythagorean. Off you go. I'm not hearing that rubbish. All right. We'll carry on. Evening from Jurgen, Paul Huskisson, Royston, Kieran Hickey, Kedwin back, and Jodie on the treadmill. Ian Cooksey, this is the last we're taking on this. Gordon Mayer's goal will never be surpassed, taking into account the level we were playing at and the opposition we were playing against. Both Kedwin and Notts deserve massive praise for the way a sensitive issue has been managed as well. Evening all from A.D. Clark. Great to see Kedwin back and on the score sheet. Evening from Graham Oates, from Kay, from James Moore. Murray Biddle, looking for revenge for last year's cock-up, the officials that gave Crewe a penalty. Never seen fans get so annoyed. Linesman that gave it was petrified. To be fair, I can sympathise a bit with the linesman. I mean, it was a pretty nasty scene, I think, at the end. And please, Notts fans, let's just concentrate on getting a result and not rise to the bait this time. Sam Draper, great to see Keds playing. I wonder if his long-term injury and his best mate Macca moving away had an impact on his mental health. Definitely not easy to deal with. I think when I listened to Adam's excellent interview, Kedwin did make mention that it wasn't necessarily all to do with football, and it was actually to do with things completely away from football. Lippy Jane enjoyed Donny, especially the Donny Brewery Tap, which had a jamming session and people doing their turns. It was fantastic, but blew the kids' mind. Game wasn't too bad either. Right. That'll cue Chloe, because I know you were at Donny. And by the way, a little bit earlier, there was a person came in the background. I hope you've not got a stalker in your flat. Maybe it was
no.
Anyway, you'll see this.
No, we'll be getting into that later.
Furtively coming in. Right, Donny. What do we reckon?
We were very good first half. Some of the best stuff I've seen us play this season. I liked the formation that we played. It's something a little bit different, but still kind of sticking with that initial philosophy that we have done. And it was working. And like you say, the goal was pretty good. It's like you say, one of the best passing goals I've certainly seen from Notts. I don't think the camera angle does it justice either. It was nice. Obviously, we were sat behind the goal and watching it from that angle. It was just when the ball went over to, I can't remember who was on the wing, but as soon as the ball went over to him and he put the cross in and Jatta was there, you kind of knew, but you had a feeling before that in the build-up of, you get the sound in the crowd. They're like, go on then. And it was that feeling of, this will be a piece if it goes in. And like you say, the team goals are always the best ones to watch. You can get some individual magic, and we've scored from the halfway line before, and different kind of accumulations of all sorts of goals. But that one will stick out, and it was just off a really good first half performance as well, and we did really look like we gelled and it was working. And I think everybody kind of knew that. Look, don't get me wrong, Doncaster weren't necessarily bad in the first half, but I think we all kind of knew that we're going to put on a better show than that when we went into half time. And as we will always say, you got to score while you're on top. And if we'd have come away with 2 or 3, there'd have been a good showing. And I'd have liked to have seen how we'd have got on. But second half, they really did come out well. And we struggled really, just holding the ball. And it kind of just flipped on its head. They had a lot of the possession. Don't get me wrong, we had some good chances as well. And we could have gone 2-0 up literally just before they scored. And And again, it's all ifs, buts and maybes. But I think if you'd have said at the start of the game, would you have gone to Doncaster away and taken a point? Absolutely. And I will always say the same, especially to obviously a team that we're looking like going to be fighting with to get one of those either top 3 or top 7 places. So it was nice to see kind of what they could do. And it was nice to keep Billy Sharp quiet as well. I know a lot of Notts fans were pleased when he walked off the pitch having not scored. But yeah, it was a good day out. Obviously, a lot of Notts fans there, as there normally is, but it really was a good show. And I think it was, I've seen a stat on Twitter and it was the highest in the EFL. So fair play to all the Notts fans. But yeah, I think the only disappointing thing was obviously as playing better in the first half than the second, you kind of come away with a little bit of a more bitter taste in your mouth of we actually nearly lost that rather than we nearly won that. But again, if those halves would have flipped and we came out the better team the second half, we would probably be more happy with a point. But I think if you kind of take it as it was and you kind of reflect on the game a day or so later, you realise it really was a good point and we've got lots of positives to take away. But yeah, and we didn't lose the game. So yeah, I'm more than happy with that point. All in all, happy with especially the first half performance, and I'm sure we can kick on. I think there's only 2 or 3 teams in the top 5 leagues that haven't lost away from home this season, and it is a really good showing compared to what we've seen in the past. Well, as long as I've supported Notts, we've always been a better home side than we have away. So it's nice to have seen this season that wherever we've been, whether it be Carlisle and Barrow or closer to home like Doncaster and Chesterfields, that we've shown a good showing, performance-wise, fans-wise, and always come away with something which makes it all worthwhile.
Should we have won it, Stal?
I don't think we should have. I think point, as Chloe said there, I think she was pretty spot on with what she said. I think a point was a fair result for both teams based over the 90 minutes. We could have very easily lost it in the last couple of minutes. Even though we were under the cosh in the second half, which we absolutely were, Doncaster stepped it up. We just stepped off it a little bit, gave them a little bit too much time and space on the ball. And inevitably, as you do when you're under the cosh, you start sitting deeper and deeper and allowing them onto us. But even at that, we still managed to spring counterattacks. And there was George Abbott, produced a good save off the keeper. Sam Austin had that header that he then he got it wrong, it just come off his shoulder, didn't quite make the contact that he wanted. Matty Palmer had a shot that went a foot or 2 wide of the post from the edge of the box. So we still posed a threat on the counter-attack, which you have to do. But I think, Chloe's right. I mean, the goal in the first half was fantastic. We scored when we were on top, and we were brilliant certainly for the first 20, 25 minutes. I thought we were brilliant. We scored when we were on the top, and Doncaster scored in the second half when they were on top. So I think as the story of the game over the 2 halves, I think a fair result. Both teams could make cases for, we could have won it, but I think a point apiece was probably a fair reflection.
Dale Pikett, it's 3 teams in the top 4 divisions of English football not to lose away yet. Liverpool, ourselves, and they who shall not be named. I'm sure you can work all that out. Paul says, I would rather win one, lose one away, as it means more points rather than drawing them. Sam Draper, I was at Crewe last season and agree with Paul. Although the linesman made a debatable decision, the Notts fans near him did not cover themselves in glory. James Moore, Doncaster's second half, it was screaming to have Robertson on to break up their play. Any news on when he will be back? Notts don't tend to give too much away. On the subject of players that weren't massively keen on football, Ian Cooksey is quite right. Tristan Benjamin, at the moment he finished his football career, never mentions it, stays totally away, doesn't like being reminded of it, and lives his own private life. Hello from the tropics of Ohio, says Keith Mullins. Greetings to everyone who is stateside. There was a bit of a debate, Stel, on the use of substitutes, or I should say the non-use of substitutes. Did that surprise you at all or not?
Yes, I think I was mentioning it on the radio myself. Now then, I think I've got a bit of inside scoop. I don't know whether I'm supposed to be saying this, but we've been told since that, obviously, if I think back to the bench, and I won't be able to name, we had 3 centre halves on the bench. on at
As you do.
Doncaster. Cundy, McDonald. Well, I think as necessity. Don't you? We've got players out, haven't we? Cundy, McDonald, Ness was it? Then we had Crowley. Who else do I can't remember? Anyway, the bit is that right? Right. Okay. So yeah, the bit I've got is that apparently, and again, Dan Crowley tweaked his groin in warming up.
Oh, right.
So he wasn't able to come on.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah.
Now I've no idea. By tweaking, I mean I think we mean he just felt something. So rather than put him on in a hurly-burly game in the second half, I think that option was taken away from Stewart. So then you're looking at the bench and you're going, well, with the way that second half was going, with us being under the cosh, where do you change it and who do you change? So sometimes you stick with the players that are up to the speed of the game. But I was mentioning it, but we did get told after the game that was a thing. Again, I don't know, how seriously he's tweaked it. I think he's felt something. So rather than risk it in a game like that when it's on a knife edge, he opted not to make a change. But I think, again, it was symptomatic of the fact that we are, let's say, down to the bare bones, but we are suffering with injuries. When you think of the names of the players that we are missing, that's a significant amount of players, certainly at the top end of the pitch.
Lippy Jane makes a good point. It's such a shame that there's not a reserves league anymore. We always went to both per week at Notts. Great to see the players progress. I think the academy back and having the chance to play is fantastic. But the game's moved on, Stell, hasn't it? And I remember Notts used to play in the North Midlands Reserve League, North Midlands, which unbelievably, wait for this, included Sunderland and Middlesbrough. North Midlands.
That's very, very North Midlands.
North Midlands if you're playing Middlesbrough.
Yeah.
But it was kind of a mix of more senior players and younger players. And the argument at that point was that kind of turned young kids into men. Yeah. So a 15, 16-year-old plays the returning centre half, the grizzled centre half, whacks you from pillar to post, and you grow into a man. That was then. This is now, and the academy system. And the reason I bring the point up for debate is that Tuesday night's game that we were at, the 1,000 people that were there from Nottingham and 100 from Leicester, it kind of felt like an academy training drill sort of thing, didn't it? And Leicester's academy players were clearly a bit better than ours because they're a long way up the pyramid and their academy's been running for a long time, and they have players in their academy that cost figures with 7 noughts at the end of it. But I thought our lot did very well. I mean, what's your view on all of that now in terms of its age group football and then it becomes men's football? There's no hybrid or in between, is there?
Yeah, and it's difficult. And then, the person there that said about the old school reserve league, I mean, I remember when I started, that was it. You started in the youth team and you tried to get in the reserve team quickly and play in the old Pontins League or Central League as it was.
League. Yeah.
And it used to get decent crowds. I remember playing at the baseball ground in front of sort of 1,500 regularly. And then occasionally there'd be a few more for a bigger game. But they were competitive games mostly. And a mix of old and young senior pros, players who've been out injured, those that just weren't in the team. The thing is, it is now a different era completely. Is it a frustration? Probably for a lot of people in the game that there is nothing to bridge that gap. I suppose the closest thing is the AFL trophy to bridge that gap to blood youngsters with senior players. But I think a lot of the logistics make it difficult as well nowadays, safeguarding and things like that. We heard, was it Joe Palmer speaking about when, was it James Sanderson was involved with the first team and you have to have a chaperone with them all day and they can't, so it's not just as simple as it was. Like I say, none of that existed back in my day. So it was just, you picked in the team, you travel with the team, you go with the team, you change and play. And it's just like another game. I think the safeguarding are all there for a reason. I think it just becomes an additional barrier to actually implementing it. And also the sort of lack of wanting to play extra games that everybody's got. You know, that there seems to be plenty of football. You know, clubs will now have maybe training ground friendlies and behind closed door games if they feel the need. You know, if they feel you've got a crop of players that need game time, if you like. So it might be a group of players coming back from injury, and you've got no other way of blooding them other than, well, you've got to put them on the bench for a first team game. So they'll generally find a way of having a behind closed door game, whether that's in house or whether you invite another club to come and do it. But yeah, the old reserve league, I've heard many people over the years say about, well, we should have a reserve league. I think that you know, I can absolutely understand the point, but I think it's difficult in practice to actually implement in the current day and age.
Yeah, I think that's a fair summation. Chloe's thinking, "Carl, what are these two old dodderers going on about reserve football? What's that? What's that?"
I imagine she's not the only one.
Oh dear, Chloe. Right, Crewe. Let's look ahead. Saturday. No Jatta. And I was just sharing with you before kickoff. If we feel a little aggrieved by Alexandra Jatta and we can't get the game called off, spare a thought for Exeter, who have to play Lincoln on Saturday. They had 2 players called up, and they've just had a 3rd player called up, but as a late call-up. And the league rules state you have to give 5 clear days or you can't get the game off. So Exeter had their 3rd international called up today, last night, whatever it was. They applied to the league to get the game off, and the league have turned around and said, no, you've gone past the cut-off point. You can't call the game off. So they've got 3 internationals, and they've still got to play the game. So Alexandra Jatta, are we going to miss him a lot? I mean, he's captured the imagination of our fan base, presumably yours too.
Absolutely. As you all know, I'm a big fan, as I'm sure most people are when you've got a goal scorer like we have. Obviously, all of the talk is always how are we going to replace Langstaff, and nobody's going to even touch the goals that he was scoring last season. And we've kind of quietly plodded along, and we're still going, and he's kind of pulled out the bag. I don't know. Obviously, we saw him a bit last season and more towards the end. But when we signed him, definitely, I don't think many people had have heard of him at all. We obviously saw some clips on social media once the name was out of the bag, and then it was a slow introduction. Obviously, we had Maka and McGoldrick as well, so he was just kind of getting a sniff here and there, and then it's kind of perfectly transitioned through, and we've been used to having him there virtually week in, week out. We've not missed too many games with him not being in the team. But yeah, it'll be interesting not to see him there on Saturday. Obviously, Kedwin might be involved now. It's obviously a bit of a different story with it being a league game. Obviously, it might have been nice for him to kind of come back slowly, and it doesn't necessarily mean because he played in the trophy game on Tuesday that he's automatically either wants to play or wants to start. So it'll be interesting to see the formation we play. Because we really do utilise him up front, and obviously McGoldrick as well. I don't know how close he is. So yeah, it'll be an interesting one to look out for on the team sheet to see how we do. But again, it's a good test for if he did pick up an injury or a knock, which would quite easily happen. We've got to get used to playing without these players. And again, the same with McGoldrick. Obviously, we've used him a lot this season already, and probably more than we were expecting. He was expecting, the management team, but again, he's been in phenomenal form. So unfortunately, there are different reasons as to why we are going to miss these key players, and it's how we perform without them. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to see how we get on. But obviously, the sooner he comes back, I'm sure we'll all be happy. And yeah, it's just going to be interesting to see how he does as well. And good on him for getting the call up. And absolutely, I don't blame anyone for wanting to go and play for their country. So yeah, good luck to him. I'm sure we'll all be looking out for that Gambia game.
Lippy Jane, there's a few of us, obviously from my era, taking a trip down memory lane for those midweek Tuesday night North Midlands League reserve games. We loved going. A bag of chips from the Meadows Chippy on the way home. There you go. You can't beat that. Stell, let's talk Jatta. I've got to say, hands up. he has done far, far better than I hoped that he might, given his lack of experience of the English game, been out for a while in Denmark. I think he's done brilliantly well, and he seems so far to be coping reasonably well. I know he's had the issues with the concussion, with the physicality of the English game, which clearly would be chalk and cheese to Denmark and was it Latvia, I think, before that. Give us a striker's critique of what he's brought to Notts that is different, if you like, to the way Macaulay Langstaff would go about getting his goals.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously there's physical differences between the two. When you just look at the size of Alexandra and you see the physical sort of option that he gives Notts, the size, the height. The header at the weekend was a good example, albeit, with delivery like that, you don't need to be tall to win the headers and put them in. That's the sort of goal Macca would have thrived, or sort of ball Macca would have thrived on. Yeah, obviously different players go about it slightly different way. But I think we said it before when Macca was here, and we'll say it, before Jatta gets his post-match where he said he was hoping to get treble figures for the season. Before he gets his 100th goal of the season, we'll mention that a lot of it comes down to the style that Notts play, the way that Notts play, and obviously the quality of the chances, the amount of times they get the ball into the box. So although there are differences between him and Macca as an individual and sort of strengths that they've got, the role they play within the team is quite a similar one in terms of they are that spearhead. They play largely between the width of the penalty area. Don't get involved too much in build-up play. I would say Jatta he gets more involved. He gives us an option to play into his body. I think he held the ball up well on Saturday, particularly when we were under the cosh, which is vital. That really is important. Where I think, if anything, that would have been a weakness of Macca's. Not his sort of game, playing up against the defender. He likes to play on the shoulder, looking to get in behind. Whereas Jatta can face up, can be strong. Maybe not quite got the sort of pace and the dynamism that Macca had, but he's still mobile enough and he's got enough pace. So, different sorts of players, but filling the same role. And when you get chances, it's about, can you finish? Can you be in the right place at the right time? And when you get there, can you finish? And he certainly seems like he can, whether they're talking the back end of last season when he came, or certainly the start he's got off to this season. Double figures for the season already is certainly no mean feat. So he's done fantastically well. I, like you, wondered whether there would be a period of a fallow period while he got used to English football. But thankfully there's been none of that. He's hit the ground running and hopefully continues to do that. And, I think he will admit, and he's the first, he seems a really humble lad.
Yes.
When you hear him speak, that he will be the first to say, just like Macca will, that he's grateful to have the quality that Notts have got in and around him, creating chances for him, so that, again, as a striker, you don't have to score goals where you beat 2 or 3 players by yourself and put one in from 25 yards. You've got to make sure you're in the right positions in the penalty area and around the 6-yard box. And if you do that, more often than not, chances will come your way. And then it's just about whether you can take them.
Ian Cooks, he says that if Gambia qualify for the AFCON, he will miss more than one game. He will be away for the whole of the tournament. We'll have to see how that gets on. Joe Crabtree, Jatta's goals per game ratio in the Football League is even better than Macca's so far. Both unbelievable Football Radar signings. And Andy Easom, not to forget our second international call-up of the week. Third choice keeper Milai Parrott called up for Bermuda's squad for the games versus Antigua and Barbuda and the Dominican Republic. Yeah, there you go. Debate at the minute. We all hope, obviously, that Didzy is available for David McGoldrick for Saturday. Stell, like me, would you read much into Kedwin coming off with half an hour to go? You think if Kedwin felt okay, that means he would at least be involved in the 16 on Saturday?
Yeah, in answer to the question, no, I wouldn't read anything into it. I think it would be a case of, if he's been away for a few weeks, missed training, then it's very difficult to come in and very difficult to come in and play a full 90 minutes. But I think they would have earmarked him, right, go and have an hour, go and give us what you've got. And in light of the fact that we are a little bit light of numbers up front, he'd got his goal. We didn't get much of the ball last night. It was more of a defensive exercise, chasing the ball, closing down. We had the ball sporadically, but you know, it's the sort of game for a striker where you're feeding on scraps. He did his hour, got some good minutes into his legs, got his goal. I don't think there'd have been any benefit keeping him on for an extra half hour. You're potentially risking a strain, you know, or something going wrong. So I think it would have been preordained. He'd probably going to do an hour. He did the hour. He did well, and hopefully he gets a bit of confidence from that goal. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if he was involved Saturday as an attacking option on the bench. You know, assuming Didsy's fit to play. But it would be a big ask if he was asked to start on Saturday. But you just never know. You just never know. And again, I'm not privy to how much training he's been doing, how long he's been back in training. So I don't read anything into the substitution of him other than protection for protection's sake, given the fact he's been sort of absent for a bit.
Okay, let's just give out some details for our first live podcast. Me and Stell, together with the one and the only Mad Dog Barks at the Trent Navigation in the Big Shed, Friday, December the 6th. So, when speaking with Martin early today, he's looking forward to coming up. He's working out some of the stories he's going to tell you that apparently he's never told before while he was at Notts. Dread to think what some of those stories are, but anyway, so what he's kindly agreed to do is that he would like to do a meet and greet with a couple of Notts fans, meet you before the event, have a chat with him, get your photos, get your Christmas cards signed, you name it, you know, a little private audience with Martin. And so what we're saying, and this I would hasten to add, includes the many of you that have already bought your tickets. But what we're saying is that everybody who buys their ticket by Monday, 6 o'clock, goes into a draw. We've obviously got all the printouts of all the people that bought the tickets, and we will be drawing a winner on the show next Monday as to who will, out of those people that have bought the tickets so far, will get the chance to meet Martin. So basically, as they say in the lottery draw, you've got to be in it to win it. So I know many of you already got tickets, but those of you who haven't, get your ticket sorted before next Monday evening, and they will then go into a draw to be drawn out on the show on Monday night. There's various links flashing across the screen on the message boards of how to get your tickets. It's on my social feeds, Magpie Circle Magpie Circle podcast, Facebook, Twitter. So go on there. It's £10 plus a £1 booking fee, so £11 to get your ticket for Mad Dog Friday, December the 6th, and get them by Monday afternoon, evening, and you go into the draw live on Monday evening. Chloe, you'll be there. Are you rounding up a group? Got your granddad and the family all coming down?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be chucking it down the motorway from Bolton that day. So yeah, I'm hoping to be there. So I'm sure I'll have an early dart that day.
Yeah, excellent. Well, we look forward to seeing you. Saturday, Crewe. Got to say, were you there? You were there last year, weren't you, Crewe?
Yeah.
Yeah. There is an adage: if you treat people like animals, they will behave like animals, and that's a bit, OTT. But I do have to say that the away arrangements at Crewe are really, really poor. And while I would never condone Notts' fans' behaviour last year in those closing minutes, I did think that whole area allocated to away fans and that sort of one staircase where you're trying to get down to either go to the loo or get your food, I thought it was quite disgraceful, really, Chloe.
Yeah, no, and I do agree with you. To be honest, I think Crewe's always been a little bit like that in terms of it always seems to get a little bit rowdy. Obviously, it's one of those games, they're not too far away from us, and we do tend to play them a lot. We've been in very similar leagues for a while now, but like you say, it is one of those grounds that that's it's not great. Obviously, it's the one staircase in and out, and it's a very long, shallow away end. So you're kind of stretched for quite a long way. But like you say, it doesn't condone what happened last year. Obviously, none of us like to see any decisions go against us, whether they're right or whether they're wrong. But unfortunately, that is the way of football, and we will all have our own emotions at the time. And it's very easy to say after an event's happened of what you could have done and what you should have said. But again, everyone's got to remember where they are, and I hate to be the person to say that it is just a game, because I'll be the first person to say that it feels a lot more than that. I mean, my whole life, career, hobby, education has all been in football, so I don't think it's a throwaway comment that it is just a game. But you kind of come out of it and you look at people like Kedwin Scott and the way Notts fans have obviously acted at Crewe away. And it's not just us. We have a lot of teams that come down to Meadow Lane and trash the place. I mean, Grimsby comes to mind. I know we've given them smaller allocations before because of the way they've treated them. And that's just one team to name. I'm just picking one out of the hat because it's fresh, and it was only a couple of seasons ago. But again, you'll get football fans like that across the country. But again, it's not condoned by anyone. And I don't think it should happen at any club, never mind our own. But obviously, everybody acts as with their emotions and in the moment. And unfortunately, a few people will have come out a little bit worse aware from that. And I'm sure they would have had big regrets, not even just the day after, only minutes after the incident happened. But unfortunately, there are kind of, it comes in swings and roundabouts, these decisions, especially out of the Premier League when we don't have VAR, unfortunately, or fortunately for some people. But it's what the referee or the linesman, what they see in that split second. And unfortunately, that's what you've got to go with. But we'll have plenty of decisions that go for and against us this season, either rightfully or wrongfully. And you'll get it week in, week out. But yeah, of course, it was gutting, especially kind of how the game went last season. I think everyone was quietly confident, and we really probably did deserve to win that game. And it got a bit touch and go towards the end, as it normally does, when there's only a goal or so in it. And then and obviously I think most of us thought that it probably wasn't a penalty. It probably splits people even now, having seen the replay and things like that. But again, it's just how you react in the moment. And again, it's easier to say said than done, because I know how emotional everyone can get during a football match. But it's really kind of taken this split second of consideration to, at the end of the day, they're human beings, and rightfully or wrongfully he's made a decision, and that's his job to do. So, but going back to your point, Crewe is not the nicest of places and not the nicest of away ends, especially as Notts normally do. We pack it out. And again, you have most people go up kind of 5 minutes before the game. You're kind of pushing and shoving, and people aren't sitting in the right seat. So you get all of that. But yeah, it does feel like you're penned in a little bit. And I would hate to think that there was any kind of emergency trying to get anyone out of there. But I can name a few clubs that I've kind of felt the same, Luton being one of them. I'm sure they will have different arrangements now they're in the Premier League. I'm sure there'll be different kind of laws they've got to abide by. But again, it's these kind of older grounds, I suppose. But yeah, we'll see how we go. But I do expect it to be kind of a bit of a rowdy atmosphere again, as it usually is with it being a team closer to home. But yeah, hopefully everyone can come away with their heads held high, and hopefully we come away with a good result and everyone's in good spirits.
Yeah, and I hope the privatised railway companies, East Midlands Railway on this occasion, put on a few more coaches on the trains, because that the only thing that was more overcrowded than the Crewe away end were the trains last year. Get your granddad, I know he's left them now, Chloe, to have a word. Callum Ashley, never been to Crewe away. Is it really that bad? Answer, yes. Royston, it's worse. It's a death trap. Stuart Smith says Crewe away last season, terrible facilities, especially for the price they charge. Ian Cooksey, they charge £28. I think it's a bit excessive. I understand Crewe with a small home fan base look to maximise revenues from away fans, but I kind of say the quid pro quo for that is that they provide a better away facility. You look at Crewe, says Chris Gosling, and then wonder why the safety certificate in the Cyril is so greatly reduced. Agree, Paul, on everything from Sam Draper. The one exit at Crewe is disgraceful. It needs sorting. £28 is abhorrent, says Andy Eason, for the facilities on offer. Stell, you were probably with the prawn sandwiches in the press box on that nice big stand the other side, weren't you?
Well, I don't like prawn sandwiches, but I'm in the big stand the other side. So we don't experience that. No, we're spoiled, I suppose, with that. But yeah, it sounds terrible. That, and it's £28. That is absolutely ridiculous for League Two football anywhere. But by the by, I suppose that's their call. But you do feel, don't you? I certainly do it when I hear that. You think, well, you want to sort of charge the same. You want to become a little bit petty about this. If they're charging £28, and no facilities, well, to come to Meadow Lane, it'd be like going to Buckingham Palace. So charge their fans £35 a seat and see how many of them bother following them. That way the club either make money or there's not many away fans there. But that's a bit petty. I'm not really of that ilk. But yeah, it does seem a lot of money, that £28.
Yeah, and again, I think all the people that were there, they might think I'm over-egging it. It really is poor. It is worthy of mention because it is that bad. And I think it's exacerbated because we fill it. So if it's only 50% full, there's more space to move around. But we fill it. And that egress entrance, just one up and down the steps, which are very steep, it's just literally rammed. I can't believe they get a safety. Obviously, they do get a safety certificate for it. But if we think back to that game last year, and you were on the other side, were you actually understanding everything that was going on? Because there was a linesman sent over, then he obviously didn't fancy it, so he ran over the other side and we're playing all these minutes, and then there's a penalty down the other end. It was quite bizarre, really.
Yeah, I do remember it, and it wasn't. I don't think it was Knott's finest hour. Let's be honest about it. It crossed the line. All the officials, we've all given officials stick, probably me as much as any, but they're doing their job. They're going to work. That's what they're doing. Nobody else wants to get to work and receive abuse, yobs, all that sort of thing. Now, I think with football, you have to take a caveat that, like as players, you're going to get verbals. You're not going to please everybody. You're always going to upset somebody. And it is passionate. It is a passionate game. So, the verbal side of it, you sort of understand. And I can, although nobody's proud of it, I understand people verbally going over the top, crossing the line, whatever you say, doing something that on a Monday morning you might go, yeah, that wasn't great, but you crack on. That's football. It's passionate. When it becomes physical, and like I say, they have to swap officials because he's feeling physically threatened and having things thrown at him, that's crossing the line. He's at work. Rightly or wrongly, we've all worked with people who are good at the job, not so good at the job. They don't deserve abuse, physical abuse. So, it wasn't Knott's finest moment. I understand the clamour for it. Last couple of minutes, debatable penalty decision, but there's a line that got crossed, and you can't undo it. There's no ifs, no buts about it. There was a line that got crossed. It shouldn't have been. It's a bit of a stain on Notts that day. Hopefully, we don't see it again.
Joe Crabtree says the combination of the facilities and aggressive atmosphere left my young nephew feeling really uncomfortable last season at Crewe. A real shame. Ian Cooksey, referees getting abuse. They've got their own back this week. Now that brings me on quite neatly because there is a Notts County connection. We all know the David Coote Premier League referee. He's a Nottinghamshire referee. He's a Notts County fan. proper Notts County fan as well. And he's been in the headlines as a result of a leaked WhatsApp video. WhatsApp don't often get people in trouble, don't it? From prime ministers down, it's always WhatsApp, a leaked WhatsApp message, a leaked WhatsApp video, in which David Coote, and he's confirmed that it was him, makes, shall we say, disparaging comments about Jurgen Klopp in particular and Liverpool in general. And it's caused a furore. There seems to be quite a groundswell for David Coote's career to now be ended. I'll give my thoughts first, and then we'll get the thoughts of Stell, the ex-pro, Chloe, the younger generation fan. Personally, right, I would say 99% of all football managers and players have said exactly the same things about referees throughout their careers as David Coote is being accused of. The difference is David Coote has been caught on camera, and for that he's totally stupid. But I think to be talking about binning his career, there are such double standards going on in the world here. As I say, managers, players, if you mic'd up one referee, remember David Ellery, one game against Arsenal, they did that. One game against Arsenal. Tony Adams, you'll remember that, all that. Hey, they did it one game, and then basically football authorities got around and said, we can't have that going on all the time. It don't look very good. We'll bin that. If you put a microphone or a video in any technical area at any one of the 46 games on any given football weekend, Premier League down to League Two, guarantee you'd have to ban 95% of all the managers, coaching staff and substitutes for doing the same thing that David Coote has done. He's been stupid, right? There's no evidence that he's given bad decisions as a result of his personal views of Jurgen Klopp or of Liverpool. No evidence whatsoever. This was 4 or 5 years ago. Give him a 2 or 3 game ban and get him back out there after the ban, right? He'll take a bit of flack. He probably deserves that for being so stupid. But as a referee, keep him going. Stell, agree or disagree?
I'd probably agree. Again, verbals, while not ideal, like you say, idiotic to let yourself be videoed saying that. But yeah, I mean, the only thing is it hinders him if I wouldn't like him to ever referee a Liverpool game anytime in the near future.
You're going to upset one group of fans. Liverpool is in that top 3. You don't want to be doing it, really.
Yeah. So, stupid. But again, like anything, it's the modern world, isn't it? We're all saints, aren't we? Everybody who spots somebody who makes a mistake is a saint, and there's only ever one sinner that needs to be cancelled, isn't it? Cancel culture, all that. Stupid, yeah. I'd probably be more down your side of it, but again, I've seen the video and I didn't really pay too much attention. But if I was a Scouser or a Liverpool fan, then it might hit a bit more personal. I don't know, but I'm not. So, am I the person to be judge and jury on it? I don't know, but yeah, I largely agree with you.
I think they'll bin him. I think they'll sack him.
But again, have they got to?
Court of a public opinion, vociferous fans who every week abuse officials, right, will forget that because he's been caught, and they'll all say referees should be held to a higher standard and all of that. I think he'll lose his job. I think
he may well. He may well, because that's the modern world, isn't it? But again, the PGMOL have got to be seen to be doing the right thing. Again, like you say, a 3-game ban seems to be okay, a bit of a slap on the wrist, but you know what they're going to get. They're going to get everybody all and sundry going, well, you're saying that's okay. You're okay in it. So again, it's part of we get extreme, ridiculous reactions both ways, don't we, to anything in the world these days. The reality is somewhere more down the middle, but like I say, that they're obeying mobs, aren't they, in the world at large at the minute. So they may have to pander to the crowd. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the latest I've heard is the FA are now considering racism charges against David Coote because he's used the nationality of Jurgen, and they're interpreting that as a form of racism. I just think it's going mad. But anyway, Chloe, what's your take on it?
It really doesn't show himself in the best light, to be honest. Especially, I think, as well. Again, he's in the public eye as much as the footballers half of the time. I mean, especially for the Premier League referees, they're kind of well known. Their faces are on TV every week. And a lot of the time it's a talking point before the match has even started about what referee you're getting. Especially, like I say, in those top leagues, because it's the same faces kind of week in, week out. And each different club will have a vendetta against each different referee for some unknown reason, results not going their way. But I think, unfortunately, that, well, this is going to get picked apart. And I think, especially, obviously, for the Liverpool fans being quite a predominant fan base, as well as in their numbers as well, that you'll see a lot of it come to light. I mean, I've seen loads of clips and videos of past decisions that are obviously that Liverpool fans seem to think that it's kind of a personal attack. There's loads of them about. There's a lot of different videos that are obviously going to come to light because obviously Liverpool fans are now think it's something personal against their team. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But it always seems in some kind of limelight there is a loose connection to Notts County, and our name always seems to come back through when there's any kind of story in the news. There is some kind of connection to Notts County, whether we're getting mentioned on TV in a random game or something like this to happen. But yeah, that was all over my feed when the news broke, and it was like, oh, and he's a Notts County fan. I thought, of course he is. Who else would he support? But yeah, it'll be an interesting one. Like you say, it's just the fact that he is a public figure, and it's not as if somebody's taken a video behind his back. Obviously, they've shared it without his consent, which I'm sure he's not going to be telling
4 or 5
anybody.
years later, that's the thing.
Yeah,
this is not
last
that's
week. What I mean. Yeah, so it's not a case of, obviously he's not consented to it being posted, but it's quite clearly obvious that he knows this video is being taken. He's in front of the cameras. He couldn't be saying it any more clear to the person on the other side of the phone watching the video. But yeah, I'm sure this isn't the last we're going to hear. And like you say, all the associations have kind of been put through the ringer in the past few years, especially with the introduction of VAR. So I'm sure they'll, again, like you say, want to be seen as they're doing something, and it'll be coming to a solution that they think represents themselves, the referee, and the different teams of the Premier League fairly. But they're never going to appeal and appease everyone, are they? So no matter what happens, there'll be people that are more angry than others. But yeah, it doesn't show either referees or himself in the best of lights. But we will see how that kind of comes about and the solution. But I'm sure it won't be anytime soon where there's because again, everything has to be under investigation, and you won't know what they're kind of looking into. But yeah, from lots of different perspectives, it'll be interesting to see. But like I say, of course he's a Notts County fan. We just have to appear in that headline somewhere.
James Moore, I can't read some of the comments out, but James Moore says, can you believe we're all rallying around a referee? I guess he is one of our own. Joe Crabtree, wouldn't have been an issue 10 years ago because the video's gone viral. There's a permanent shadow cast over his objectivity. Afraid to say he'll probably get the push. I have a horrible feeling he will. I hope he doesn't. Don't think he deserves it. But once again, if you're new to refs, they can't talk after games and all the rest of it. One of my things, it's open season on them. Anyway, right, enough of that. We've got enough problems at Notts County. No Alexandra Jatta. Hopefully David McGoldrick may well be Kedwin Scott in the mix at Crewe on Saturday. Don't forget to get those Martin Allen tickets before Monday next week. Live draw to decide who will be meeting Martin for you and a guest to meet him before, but you've got to have bought a ticket before Monday. Off you pop on that. Stel, thank you as always. Chloe, thank you. We will see you all next Monday. Stel, thank you very much.
Cheers. Pleasure, everyone.
Chloe,
Thanks as always. Good to speak to you both.
excellent. We will see you next Monday. Cheers for now. Bye-bye.